Part 132. After the flash marriage, the character collapsed. Author, Dowby in the World. Chapter 1311. Chapter 1311. Her daughter is still alive too. Sure enough, after walking around for a while, we saw Baisia among the flowers, chatting and laughing with all kinds of beauties. Qian Yuman felt dizzy when she looked at the crowd in front of her. At this moment, she could only rely on her own ability to force her way in. Qian Yuman was like Baisia's admirer at this moment, crazily squeezing in and shouting loudly when she squeezed in. Bixia, give me the information quickly. Qian Yuman chewed at the top of her lungs and slowly squeezed to Bixia's side. Bixia finally noticed Qian Yuman, smiled handsomely, and gestured to the admirers around him to silence him. Everyone closed their mouths one after another, and the surrounding area became quiet. Manman, you are finally here. If you don't come again, I don't know how many beauties will gather around me. I may not even be able to squeeze you in. Baisia covered his forehead narcissistically and shook his head, with a look of helplessness on his face. With a strange appearance attracted by his own charm. Why don't you die of narcissism? Qian Yuman couldn't help but complained in her heart, and spread her hands to ask for something. Paternity test, I want to know if Ruru is my daughter. I won't give it unless you kiss me. Baisia said it was a hooligan, just a hooligan, without any hint at all. The corners of Qian Yuman's mouth twitched slightly. What the hell? I was too lazy to bother with him, and glared at him with a stinky face. Seeing that Qian Yuman didn't follow his routine at all, she had no choice but to take out the paternity test certificate she had prepared and give it to him. He should stay with his beautiful wife. Qian Yuman took the paternity test report. This report was so hot at the moment. It recorded the truth she longed to know. Flying all the way to the magic city, she didn't fall asleep, and she kept thinking about everything in her mind. Ruru, could Ruru really be her daughter? Dehao Group Branch Portal. Qian Yuman stood in the lobby downstairs. She tried several times to enter but failed because she was blocked by others. Let me in, I'm really the wife of your chairman. She has been here several times, but 3 years have passed, and the front desk has been replaced, and she doesn't recognize her at all. Chairman's wife? Our chairman doesn't have a wife. Don't think that we are stupid and ignorant, the lady at the front desk sneered. She thought she wanted to be the chairman's wife because she had a pretty face? Where is it so easy? There are so many beautiful women. Qian Yuman looked upset. She tried to call Tang Yuj, but she didn't expect that the man actually blocked her. No matter how many times she called, it was useless. You. Qian Yuman called another person again, this time to Secretary Zhang. No one answered the call just now. She had plenty of time now, so she called slowly until he got through. This time the call was connected not long after, and Qian Yuman immediately yelled at the phone. Zhang Tianrui, come downstairs and pick me up quickly, the front desk won't let me go up. Secretary Zhang, whose ears were ringing after being yelled at, looked at the phone innocently and made sure he wouldn't yell again before putting the phone close to his ear. Madam, why are you here? Stop talking nonsense, come down and pick me up quickly. Here, I'll be down right away. Secretary Zhang hung up the phone, stood up and walked downstairs. Why is your wife here? Don't you want to get into trouble with Mr. Tang? It's better to come and make Mr. Tang happy as soon as possible. His happy life will be right in front of him. He doesn't need to worry about staying and working overtime with Mr. Tang every night. End of this chapter. After the flash marriage, the character collapsed. Author, Dowby in the World. Chapter 1312. Chapter 1312. Her daughter is still alive. 3. Why is your wife here? Don't you want to get into trouble with Mr. Tang? It's better to come and make Mr. Tang happy as soon as possible. His happy life will be right in front of him. He doesn't need to worry about staying and working overtime with Mr. Tang every night. Secretary Zhang happily prepared to go downstairs to pick someone up. A certain cold-faced man in the office seemed to have a pair of ears and heard the conversation between Secretary Zhang and Qian Yuman outside. He opened the door and gave an order in a cold voice. "You're not allowed to go." Tang Yu's face was cold and ugly, and he glared at her with terrifying eyes. "But, Miss Qian is downstairs, and she should be looking for you to reconcile. This is a happy event, shouldn't you be happy? Did I say I wanted to see her? If you dare to go, you can get out of the company. I don't welcome secretaries who don't obey the leadership's instructions." Tang Yu roared, turned around indifferently, and closed the office door forcefully. Secretary Zhang was stunned for a moment after being scolded, looking at the phone and sighing. It seems that Mr. Tang's anger will not go away in a day or two. "Madam, you can only ask for blessings. You have to find a way to solve the evil you have caused. Tian Rui can't help you." Qian Yuman waited downstairs for a long time, but she didn't even wait for Secretary Zhang to come downstairs. She made several calls in a row but no one answered, which made Qian Yuman almost angry. "Well, Zhang Tian Rui, you and Mr. Tang are joining forces to make things difficult for me? Do you think I, Qian Yuman, will give up like this?" Qian Yuman cursed into the phone. The two receptionists looked at each other, then smiled mockingly. "Mrs. Tang, I wonder when Mr. Tang will come to pick you up. Since he hasn't, why don't you hurry up and get out of here? It's shameless to show off to your full extent." The strange sarcasm at the front desk made Qian Yuman's face look ugly. "They think she is fake and that's why she is like this. Don't argue with them." Qian Yuman looked at the paternity test that she had been holding in her hand. This paternity test was very detailed. It not only tested the paternity of her and Ruru, but also took out the paternity test of Tang Yu and his family. In the end the answer is obvious. Ruru is her daughter, the daughter of her and Tang Yu. Their daughter did not die that year. All this was Wang Tianyu's fault. Qian Yuman knew the answer and immediately came to Tang Yu to explain the situation. She didn't expect that she would hit a wall. He didn't even give her a chance to see her and listen to the explanation. "Thinking about what I said and did to him, I can deeply understand what he did. It is indeed impossible for him to unconditionally choose to forgive her after she did such an outrageous thing. Everything depends on her. Isn't it just a little bit of a setback? I can't meet you." When they met again, she didn't feel embarrassed for him. This was nothing. Qian Yuman figured it out and felt much better. Since she can't see Tang Yu in person, she will not continue to wait. She still has a very important thing to do, to meet their precious daughter. Ruru, their lovely daughter, their lost and found daughter. When they first met, she only watched from a distance. She never touched her or held her. She missed nearly 3 years of growth. Besides investing, what she longed to see most was her baby daughter. Qian Yuman turned around and walked out of the Dihao group. As she was leaving, she bumped into someone at the door. A man with an expressionless face and a bone-chilling look on his face. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the flash marriage, the character collapsed. Author, Daobi in the World. Chapter 1313. Chapter 1313, Big Change in Personality. Qian Yuman turned around and walked out of the Dihao group. As she was leaving, she bumped into someone at the door. A man with an expressionless face and a bone-chilling look on his face. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, Zingai, Qian Yuman shouted uncertainly. When she shouted the sentence, even she had doubts about whether she had recognized the wrong person. The big boy, who looked bone-chillingly cold in front of him and showed 2 cute little tiger teeth when he smiled, had completely changed his appearance after not seeing him for more than 3 years. Wearing a crisp suit, his face was expressionless, and the eyes he looked at her did not show the enthusiasm that an acquaintance should have, and were as cold as death. The person in front of her was not the same person as the naughty Tang Xingai in her mind. The little kid who often followed her and called teacher Qian not only became more masculine, but also changed his personality a lot. Tang Xingai's cold eyes finally fell on her when he heard the person who bumped into him shout his name. After seeing her appearance clearly, he just nodded lightly and actually planned to turn around and leave. When Qian Yuman saw the student he hadn't seen for many years, he immediately grabbed his clothes, his eyes shining with enthusiasm. Tang Xingai appeared at the gate of Dihao Group, and it must be related to Tang Yuj. There was no time to pay attention to why his temperament changed drastically, but he grabbed the former and future brother-in-law and asked for help. "Take me up to see your elder brother." Tang Xingai stared at Qian Yuman's hand holding his clothes. He was as cold as ice and didn't speak. His alienation was obvious. Qian Yuman was so embarrassed when he stared at her that she grabbed his clothes, let go and smiled at him awkwardly. "Xingai, what's wrong with you? Why are you talking to me like this? Don't you remember who I am? Have you lost your memory?" Qian Yuman couldn't figure out why the former student became like this. Even though we hadn't seen each other for more than 3 years, he wouldn't be so alienated from her, looking at her like he was looking at a stranger. When she was in the Tang family, apart from Tang Yuj, she had the best relationship with Tang Xingai. "Sister-in-law," Tang Xingai shouted coldly. Although the words she shouted made Qian Yuman very happy, she still thought she was her sister-in-law, but her tone was too emotionless. People who didn't know thought it was Qian Yuman holding the hand. The gun forced him to call his sister-in-law. "Xingai, you seem to have grown taller and more mature, and your personality seems to be different from before." She thought she was seeing Tang Xingai's twin brother. "Grown up." Still speaking briefly, not only did Tang Xingai's personality change, but his expression and clothing also changed, and even his tone of voice changed, and he cherished words even more. Qian Yuman can be sure that, except for Lan Tianlu, a big iceberg who is naturally indifferent, Tang Xingai is the coldest man she has ever met. The difference from Lan Tianlu is that Lan Tianlu is not interested in anything other than Xiaoling and has a dull personality. Tang Xingai gives people the feeling that the whole world owes him money, and he looks at everything as if he is looking at a dead thing. What happened to him in the past 3 years or so? Never heard Mr. Tang talk about it? Not caring about Mr. Tang's affairs, Qian Yuman was full of gossip at the moment and tried to ask him about his situation, but he had no interest in continuing the conversation. Helpless, Qian Yuman braved the cold and asked for Tang Xingai's contact information before waving goodbye to him and anxiously looking for her daughter. End of this chapter. After the flash marriage, the character collapsed. Author, Daobi in the World. Chapter 1314. Chapter 1314 Mother and daughter meet one. Not caring about Mr. Tang's affairs, Qian Yuman was full of gossip at the moment and tried to ask him about his situation, but he had no interest in continuing the conversation. Reluctantly, Qian Yuman braved the cold weather and asked for Tang Xingai's contact information before waving goodbye to him and hurriedly looking for her daughter. She showed that Tang Yuj could not see her and Tang Xingai didn't want to chat anymore. She didn't waste any time and immediately went to find her daughter without stopping. Qian Yuman's leaving figure fell into the eyes of a certain man at the same time. From the moment she appeared outside, her figure was stared at by Tang Yuj. When he saw her talking to Tang Xingai, when he saw her leaving, those eyes darker. Thought she would insist on seeing him, but it turned out that for her, waiting patiently for him was only a few minutes. Same, she is busy preparing for the wedding now, and it is no longer important to find him as her old lover, so how can she spend more time with him? What else is he expecting? Expect her to suddenly change her mind, believe what he said, and come to get back together? Cruel woman. Qian Yuman took a taxi and left, feeling a little excited. Daughter, her little princess, the little princess who was lost and found. Qian Yuman didn't think much about where Ruru was and ran directly towards Murong's home. Facing Murong 11, whom she hadn't seen for many years, Qian Yuman was still a little uneasy. No matter whether Murong 11 misled her intentionally or not, she had been resentful of Murong 11 for more than 3 years, and it was impossible for her to disappear overnight. But thinking that she had helped him take care of Ruru for 3 years, he still couldn't give her a bad look. Qian Yuman rang the doorbell frantically, but no one came to open the door. You're not at home, are you? Qian Yuman covered her forehead in frustration. Thinking about how Murong 11 is also the vice president of the Dihao group, he is usually a busy person and cannot be at home every day. So is Ruru usually taken care of by a nanny? Will the nanny be abusive? It's often said in the news that nannies abuse children. Qian Yuman's imagination started to work, and he was thinking about these terrible news headlines one after another crazily. At this moment, the door in front of her opened slowly. Qian Yuman looked around and saw no one. Did she open the door automatically? Down below a dissatisfied Nyonyo voice sounded. Qian Yuman lowered her head and saw Ruru wearing a pink princess dress, holding a Barbie doll in her hands, looking at her with innocent eyes. Oh my God! The more I look at him, the more he looks like Mr. Tang. He is a carbon copy of Mr. Tang. It is a terrible genetic inheritance. Now she couldn't bear to think that when Ruru grew up, she would be Tangyuj wearing women's clothing. Ruru blinked her beautiful eyes, looked at the beautiful ant in front of her, tilted her head and shouted inside. Grandma Zhang, there is a strange ant at the door. Baby girl, Qian Yuman got excited and squatted down to hug Ruru. Like a strange ant, she held Ruru in her arms and kept rubbing her head. She held her with such force that she felt like she was going to crush her, and she also made strange humming sounds from her mouth. Ruru, who looked confused, shouted at the top of her voice with some fear. Help! Grandma Zhang, help, there was a strange ant. Hearing Ruru's plea for help, the housekeeper, Grandma Zhang, ran out quickly with a spatula in her hand. She was just preparing lunch for Ruru. Who are you? Let go of the little lady, or I'll be rude to you. Grandma Zhang gestured toward Qian Yuman aggressively, fearing that the woman holding Ruru would go crazy. End of this chapter. After the flash marriage, the character collapsed. Author, Daobi in the World. Chapter 1315. Chapter 1315. Mother and daughter meet too. Who are you? Let go of the little lady, or I'll be rude to you. Grandma Zhang gestured toward Qian Yuman aggressively, fearing that the woman holding Ruru would go crazy. Realizing that her current behavior really looked like a pervert, Qian Yuman blinked her red eyes, because she was so excited to see her daughter that she was so moved that she almost cried. Well, I'm not a pervert, I'm the child's mother, and I'm here to meet Ruru today. Qian Yuman explained her purpose, holding Ruru in her arms and refusing to let go. Mom, Grandma Zhang's jaw almost dropped. She looked at Qian Yuman's face in shock and then at Ruru. Ruru, who was in Qian Yuman's arms, looked at Qian Yuman curiously. Auntie, how can you be my mother? I have a mother, Ruru said in a milky voice, pouting her little mouth and complaining dissatisfiedly. Ruru's simple words made Qian Yuman's heart ache. After all, she had lost many years of getting along with her. In her heart, her mother was Murong 11, and she was still her love rival. She couldn't reconcile herself to that. You come in first. Grandma Zhang was also someone who had experienced the storm. She quickly calmed down and brought Qian Yuman in. Seeing that she refused to let go of Ruru, she was helpless. Grandma Zhang poured a glass of water for Qian Yuman, sat opposite her, and looked at Qian Yuman. Judging from how well she is dressed, she doesn't look like a cruel mother who would throw her daughter at the door of someone else's house. Auntie, let me go, you are holding Ruru so hard that she can hardly breathe. Ruru, you have to call me mommy, Jianyuman corrected her seriously. When she heard her daughter call her aunt, her heart felt like being pricked by needles, which hurt. You are so strange, Grandma Jiang, you are afraid. The little guy showed timidity on his face and reached out to Grandma Jiang for help. Jianyuman turned a deaf ear and pretended not to see. She still held her daughter in her arms and turned a blind eye to Grandma Jiang, who wanted to run away with her daughter. Where is Murong 11, aren't you at home? Jianyuman changed the subject and asked about Murong 11's whereabouts. Miss? Do you know Our Lady? Grandma Jiang was surprised that Jianyuman would know Murong 11. I'm sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Jianyuman, and I am Ruru's biological mother. Today I came to meet my daughter and pick her up. Jianyuman rubbed the girl who had been struggling in her arms. The little guy, this little guy is not restless at all. Without little Mickey, Ruru, who grew up under the care of Murong 11, behaves as she should at her age. Murong 11 and I have some connection, and your young master Murong Ye is visiting my home at the moment. If he really marries my sister, he is my brother-in-law. She also has a connection with the Murong family. Grandma Jiang opened her mouth because of Jianyuman's words. It seemed that this matter was not simple. The beautiful woman in front of her suddenly came up and said that she was Ruru's biological mother. From her tone, she was very familiar with the young master. Are you Miss Lili's sister? Yes, Jianyuman smiled and nodded. The little guy in her arms was still struggling, feeling a little frustrated. After being missing for nearly 3 years, she is not as clingy to her as little Mickey, and is even a little afraid of her. Ruru, are you hungry? Do you want mommy to prepare something delicious for you? Jianyuman asked lovingly, with a gentle tone and a hint of flattery. Delicious, is there anything delicious? End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the flash marriage, the character collapsed. Author, Daobi in the World. Chapter 1316. Chapter 1316. Mother and daughter meet 3. What's delicious? Is there anything delicious? Ruru is just a simple little girl. She was unhappy being hugged by a strange aunt all the time. When she heard about the food, she forgot everything and ignored Jianyuman's claim to be her mother. Me, I asked excitedly what was delicious. I'll make whatever delicious food you want to eat for you. Mommy's craftsmanship is very good. Really? Then I want to eat durian layer cakes. Ruru happily waved her hand and ordered a bunch of delicious food. Jianyuman rubbed her daughter's hair and promised her to make them all. Fortunately, the Murong family has prepared durian ingredients because Ruru loves durian. She immediately transformed into a pastry chef and helped Ruru prepare delicious food. Ruru stood aside obediently and watched Jianyuman busy preparing delicious food for her. Grandma Jiang called Murong 11 to inform her of her return and briefly informed her of Jianyuman's arrival. When she noticed again, she saw Jianyuman busy in the kitchen, preparing delicious food for Ruru. She was also afraid that she would be hungry, so she prepared simple and quick snacks to fill her stomach. Young people today are so strange. I didn't want my child to be so decisive at the beginning. I left the child at the door and left. 3 years later, I came to look for my daughter and was still trying to please her like this. Never mind. This is beyond their control. Murong 11 received a call from Grandma Jiang, left the client and ran back. Jianyuman, why did she come to her house? And she said she was Ruru's mother? When I returned home full of doubts, I saw Ruru swaying her little feet and eating delicious desserts under Jianyuman's feeding. The two got along very warmly. Ruru Murong 11 called out and walked over. Ruru happily jumped off the chair when she saw her mommy coming back and ran towards Murong 11. "Mommy, you're back." That sentence about mommy, which Jianyuman could not get from Ruru no matter how much she coaxed, was shouted to Murong 11 so simply and naturally. That shout made Jianyuman's eyes turn red. "Don't be sad, Ruru is still young and doesn't understand what happened, so she calls Murong 11, who has been raising her, mommy. 3 years missed cannot be made up with just a snack." Xiao 11 Jianyuman smiled generously at her, put down the spoon in her hand, and walked slowly towards them. Murong 11 is already over 30 years old, but time has left no trace on her body. The way she holds Ruru in her arms exudes the brilliance of motherhood. If it weren't for the fact that the paternity test certificate proves that Ruru is her child, she would really think that Ruru is her child. Murong 11's daughter. "Manman, why did you come to me?" For Ruru. Jianyuman looked at Ruru with a much gentler look. Murong 11's face turned dark instantly and he turned away warily. "For Ruru, what do you mean? Don't you see it, Ruru looks exactly like Mr. Tang. Aren't you surprised why a baby appears at your door and looks just like him?" Murong 11 was silent. It was not that she had never thought about this. "Because this is my and Mr. Tang's little daughter," Jianyuman calmly told the truth. Murong 11 suddenly looked at Jianyuman, her beautiful eyes widened in disbelief. Her Enyuj's daughter? Ruru in Murong 11's arms blinked curious eyes and stared at Jianyuman. "Auntie? What are you talking about? Ruru doesn't understand." Murong 11 looked at Ruru in her arms and handed the child to Grandma Zhang. End of this chapter. After the flash marriage, the character collapsed. Author, Daobi in the World. Chapter 1317. Chapter 1317 Murong 11's Strength 1. Murong 11 looked at Ruru in her arms and handed the child to Grandma Zhang. This occasion was not suitable for children. Ruru was still young and not as smart as little Mickey. She could not understand the complex conversations between adults. Ruru was taken away by Grandma Zhang, and Murong 11 and Jianyuman sat down to have a good talk. Murong 11 has always been a typical representative of strong women in the new century, and is also ranked high in the list of richest women in the world. The reason why she became the vice president of Emgrand Group was not only because she was Murong's sister, but also because of her skills and ability to deal with things. Back then, she accompanied Tangyuj and Murong to co-found the Dehao Group. She has the arrogance and confidence of a strong woman, and her invisible aura is much stronger than Jianyuman's. The two sat down face to face, and it was at this moment that Jianyuman realized the gap between her and Murong 11. "I've been missing for more than 3 years. I didn't expect that when we first met, it was you who took the initiative to look for me." Murong 11 folded her arms and looked at Jianyuman calmly. "Long time no see." Jianyuman simply said hello. "I heard that you are getting married recently, congratulations." Murong 11 smiled and congratulated. Jianyuman frowned slightly uncomfortably. It seemed that Murong 11 knew everything about what happened to her recently. Although she hadn't seen him for 3 years, she paid a lot of attention to her. "The wedding will be cancelled." "Really? I'm really sorry that I haven't heard of it." Jianyuman shook her head, realizing that the rhythm of the conversation between them had been led astray by Murong 11. She was not here today to talk about her recent situation. It's not that she has never gotten along with Murong 11, but she has never felt such a strong aura from her. The aura was so strong that she couldn't help but be respectful to her, and even the content of the conversation was diverted. "I came today to take Ruru back." Jianyuman brought the topic back to Ruru. "Why?" Murong 11's tone was calm, but it made people feel a little creepy. "I am Ruru's biological mother," Jianyuman said excitedly. She could feel Murong 11's dissatisfaction. Jianyuman handed the prepared information to Murong 11 and explained slowly. "It was a bit rash for me to come suddenly. There is a reason for that. I only found out that Ruru is my daughter not long ago, and all this was because of Wang Tianyu's conspiracy. Qian Yuman briefly told her story. She believed that Murong 11 was a sensible person. I am very grateful for your care of Ruru in the past 3 years. Now that I have found Ruru, I will take her away today. Murong 11 listened to Qian Yuman's explanation. Her expression never changed. She was calm, cold and arrogant. Are you trying to settle a score with me today, blaming me for deliberately misleading you with what I said at the beginning? Qian Yuman shook his head quickly. Xiao 11, no, it's not all my fault. It's all my fault. I can't blame anyone else. In the final analysis, half of everything is her own fault. She didn't believe Mr. Tang's words. In Wang Tianyu's eudoxia, she thought that the person Tang Yuj liked was Murong 11. It was impossible for her to blame all her mistakes on Murong 11, who had not done any real damage. Moreover, it was her wake-up call and care in the past 3 years that enabled her to take such good care of her precious daughter. It was not too late for her to be grateful. It's good that you understand, but I won't give Ruru to you. End of this chapter. After the flash marriage, the character collapsed. Author, Daobi in the World. Chapter 1318. Chapter 1318 Murong 11's Strength 2. Why, Qian Yuman could be calm one moment, but stood up in protest excitedly the next. That is my daughter. I am very grateful to you for taking care of Ruru for so many years. Now that I know that she is still alive in this world, I have reason to bring her back to me to take care of her. What about the biological mother? Murong 11 sneered and stood up slowly. The harm you did to Yuj gives me 100 reasons to drive you away. Yuj made so many sacrifices and compromises for you. You know how painful he was when he thought you were dead 3 years ago. If his brother and I had not been with him, he might have followed you. I didn't do that, and I'm very innocent. Qian Yuman felt extremely aggrieved. Yes. That was a trap set by Wang Tianyu, but what did you do to Yuj when you thought your daughter was dead? You said so many cruel words, which made him miserable for so long. In the past 3 years, I have been accompanying you. You care for him, try to turn him back into a normal person, and take him out of the pain. But you, after only a few months, you have brought him back to his original shape, and it is even more painful. You just misunderstood that Ruru is my Yuj's daughter. You are going to marry another man and hurt Yuj. How dare I give Ruru back to you, a woman like you? Ruru is just a simple child. I don't want Ruru to watch her parents arguing all the time. This is harmful to her growth. Facing Murong 11's accusations one after another, Qian Yuman felt her face burning with pain. Her words were like slaps on her face, hitting her. She once heard a few simple sentences about Tang Yuj's life in recent years from Murong Yet. Then I heard from Murong 11 that it was more painful to realize that the process was terrible, otherwise she wouldn't have scolded her so excitedly. Qian Yuman, who was already feeling guilty, felt even more unstable at this moment, and she was almost overwhelmed by self-blame. But I am Ruru's biological mother. Qian Yuman could only utter these words to her. All other words she wanted to say were wiped out by self-blame. She thought that Tang Yuj might have been living in the abyss of pain for more than 3 years. Her heart seemed to have been dug out, beaten severely, and then put back casually. She was in so much pain that she might faint at any time. She felt that she was not a human being, and under many misunderstandings, he kept using his sincerity to hurt her. There were indeed a lot of misunderstandings in the process, and many people misled me, but there is no denying that everything was based on my own incompetence and distrust. Even if I trust Mr. Tang, after getting back together this time, I will not break up again and cause him 3 times of harm. Qian Yuman's self-blaming look did not make Murong 11 feel any happy or joyful. Instead, she felt even more ridiculous, and the contempt in her eyes was self-evident. Even if you are Ruru's biological mother, so what? Now legally, I am Ruru's adoptive mother, and her household registration is in my household registration. Even if you want to file a lawsuit, the child will be awarded to Yuj at most, not to Yuj. For you. Xiao 11, how could you do this? Qian Yuman's tears fell. I know that the harm I have caused to Mr. Tang is excessive, but Ruru is my biological daughter after all. In the past 3 years, I have shed a lot of tears because of her death. I finally found out that she is still alive. I'm so happy, I just want to bring my daughter back and reunite our family. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the flash marriage, the character collapsed. Author, Daobi in the World. Chapter 1319. Chapter 1319 Murong 11 Strength 3. Xiao 11, how could you do this? Qian Yuman's tears fell. I know the harm I have caused to Mr. Tang is excessive, but Ruru is my biological daughter after all. In the past 3 years, I have shed a lot of tears over her death. I finally found out that she is still alive, and I'm so happy, I just want to bring my daughter back and reunite our family. Don't tell me how innocent you are. Murong 11's serious contempt became even greater. Let's go. Ruru, I won't give it to you. In her heart now, I am her mother. If you take her away with force, what role will you play in her young heart? You understand it yourself. Murong 11, don't go too far. I thank you for your care over the past few years, but you can't deprive our mother and daughter of their right to live. Qian Yuman was going crazy. She never expected that if she came to get her daughter back, she would. After encountering such a big difficulty, she never expected that Murong 11 didn't want to return her daughter to her, and even said threatening words. Mother and daughter? They are just mothers by blood, and I am the mother who raised her. In her heart, am I her mother? Want to recognize your daughter? You can ask Yuj to come to me for it. He asked me if he wants a daughter, I will definitely give it to him. But you, will only hurt his woman. Why should I give you my beloved daughter who I have cared for 3 years? If you have the ability, come and her away. Murong 11 smiled coldly. The eyes that looked at Qian Yuman were cold and piercing. What Murong 11 said was already obvious. The child would not be returned to her. She could it away, depending on her ability. She, Murong 11, is not someone to be trifled with. After all, she is the daughter of an underworld family, and she has plenty of ways to fight Qian Yuman. Even if Qian Yuman has many friends to help him, will he really help? The Murong family are not people to be trifled with. If they really wanted to hide Ruru, Qian Yuman would not be able to find her even if she tried to find her. Qian Yuman's family affairs are still much worse than those of Murong's family. Qian Yuman has many friends who can help, but for Murong 11's sake, I'm afraid some people still won't help, and even if they do, they won't completely offend them. The most important thing is, as Murong 11 said, in Ruru's heart, she is her mother. If Qian Yuman does something extreme, it may make Ruru sad and regard Qian Yuman as a bad woman. Murong 11, at least you let me get along with my daughter. Ruru is afraid of life, it's better not to come. Murong 11's cruelty was something Qian Yuman had never seen before. Mother Zhang, give it away. At this moment, Qian Yuman realized that he didn't know anything about this woman. In the past, he seemed approachable, all for Tang Yuj's sake. Qian Yuman hurt Tang Yuj deeply this time, once or twice. Murong 11 would not have wanted to make things difficult for her just because Tang Yuj was nice to her, so that she could be happier. Qian Yuman was driven out in despair. Her daughter saw her and said a few words, but she did not take her away. Qian Yuman collapsed and cried loudly at the door. She was so helpless, so helpless. Can't take her daughter away and can't see Tangyuj. She came to S city this time and hit a wall. Why is she such a failure as a person? She always hurts those who love her. Now her life is also in a mess. She doesn't get along well with anyone. She is even a little at a loss. She doesn't know what to do. She is so hesitant. End of this chapter. After the flash marriage, the character collapsed. Author, Daobi in the World. Chapter 1320. Chapter 1320 Murong 11 Strength 4. Ruru. My baby girl, I really want to take you away, but mommy can't do it at all. Mommy really loves you, but mommy is useless. When I lost you, you couldn't grow up with me, and I can't even bring you by my side now. She also lost your daddy and refused to care about her. Why does she always mess up things like this? Qian Yuman kept crying and crying until her voice became hoarse, but it was still useless. Murong 11 looked at Qian Yuman, who was squatting at her door crying indifferently, the corners of his mouth raised indifferently. Why are you crying? Are you pretending to be sympathetic in front of me? When you hurt Yuj, why didn't you expect this day? It's all your own fault. I won't be too sympathetic. Murong 11 became more and more depressed as he talked and shook his head. Stop seeing her. Ruru, dressed in a cute rabbit sleepwear, staggered in with a baby in her arms and shouted to Murong 11 in a sweet voice. Mom, can I sleep with you tonight? Unlike Qian Yuman, who was indifferent, Murong 11 had a very gentle expression on her face when she turned to Ruru, and her eyes looking at Ruru were also very loving. Ruru, want to sleep with Mom? Of course you'll be happy, Mom can't wait to do it. Long live. Ruru happily trotted over, hugged Murong 11's calf, and acted coquettishly. Her eyes caught sight of Qian Yuman, who was squatting at the door and crying. She raised her little head in confusion, pointed in the direction of Qian Yuman and asked. Mom, what happened to the aunt who just made a delicious cake for Ruru to eat? Why did she keep squatting at the door and crying? She was crying so sadly. Ruru, be good, Ruru, don't worry. But, Mom, do you really don't care? She looked really pitiful, and Ruru felt depressed. Ruru pouted her little mouth, her eyes always paying attention to Qian Yuman, who was squatting on the ground and crying. It's okay. When people are sad, they have to cry loudly to feel better. If you hold everything in, you may get it bad. Murong 11 gently touched Ruru's head. Oh, Ruru couldn't help but look at Qian Yuman a few more times, tilting her head to think carefully about what Murong 11 said. Let's go to bed. Murong 11 picked up Ruru and closed the curtains. Sleep, Ruru cheered, then forgot about Qian Yuman, and shouted that she wanted to hear a bedtime story. Qian Yuman returned home in a daze. Now her parents, mother, and sister are still in Paris, and she is the only one in the huge villa. When she came to the door, she didn't want to go in and unknowingly came to the house next door. She came to the fence next to the entrance of the villa. This was the place where she and Mr. Tang met. They were both young at that time and she was only 3 years old. But she still remembers every bit of the meeting. Since then, Brother Wang has doted on her and been obedient to her. She liked to stick to him the most when she was a child. At that time, she obeyed what Brother Wang said. Thinking about the past, she scolded herself even more. She trusted him so much when she was a child. Why did she change when she grew up? Although his personality is different from when he was a child, his kindness to her has never changed. She still doubts him and doesn't believe him. She deserves to be ignored now. But, don't ignore me all the time, Qian Yuman cried loudly without any warning. Fortunately, there were few people passing by here at night, otherwise Qian Yuman would have been regarded as a psychopath. Woman, you cry ugly. End of this chapter.